Welcome to the Geriatric Dietitian, your go-to resource for nutrition that supports health, independence, and confidence in aging. I'm your host, Katie Dodd, registered dietitian and geriatric nutrition expert. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of the Geriatric Dietitian Podcast, Calories for Seniors, Preventing Unintended Weight Loss. Now, today we are wrapping up a little series we've been doing all about key nutrients for older adults. I started the series talking about the 7 key nutrients for healthy aging, the ones that, while every nutrient is important, these are the ones that I tend to go to the most when it comes to geriatric nutrition. And we are rounding things out with our final discussion all about calories and why they matter so much for older adults. Now, I think this is a really important conversation because oftentimes nutrition advice when it comes around calories comes down to eating less, restriction of calories, dieting, weight loss, all the things. But in geriatrics, something is a bigger concern, and that is not eating enough. Now, I want to make something clear from the very beginning. Not every older adult needs more calories. We're going to be saying this multiple times on the podcast, but the recommendations I give here are very general advice. One older adult is not the same as another older adult. Aging varies. Age 65 to end of life is considered geriatric age range, and everyone's needs are so different. In fact, many older adults might benefit from seasons where they have less calories than younger adults because of changes in metabolism, decreases in activity level, and body composition with aging. However, there are situations where calories become critically important, especially in older adults who start losing weight unintentionally. Because when an older adult starts losing weight unintentionally, they are losing muscle. And preserving muscle is one of the most important things that we can do in healthy aging. So today, we're going to talk about what calories are, why calories matter in aging, why unintended weight loss is so concerning. We're going to go over some high-calorie foods for older adults, practical ways to increase calories if that's you, and when to involve your healthcare team. As always, this podcast is general nutrition education and not individualized medical advice. Calorie needs vary based on medical conditions, medications, activity levels, illness, body size, so many different things, and it's always important to work with your healthcare team for individualized recommendations. So let's dive in, starting with the question of what are calories? So calories are a unit of energy. The body uses calories from food and from beverages with calories to fuel everything we do, from breathing, walking, thinking, healing, digestion, maintaining muscle and organ function. We need calories because it provides us energy to do everything we do. That's why if you don't eat enough food, what happens? You starve to death. One way to think about calories is like gasoline in a car. A car needs fuel. It needs gasoline to run properly. And if you don't put enough gas in the car, eventually that car stops working the way it should. And if you repeatedly run that car on empty over time, you could damage the engine and the other important parts. Our bodies work similarly. When older adults consistently don't eat enough calories, the body starts breaking down muscle and tissue for energy. Because remember, the body needs energy to work. And if we're not getting that energy through food, the body's going to find another way to survive. And that starts with breaking down muscle so that way it gets the energy it needs. If it's breaking down muscle and tissue for energy, this leads to weakness, frailty, loss of muscle, fatigue, poor healing, and loss of independence. And that's why calories aren't always something to fear. Honestly, calories should never be something to fear. But calories are essential fuel for the body. They are so good and important for us. The goal isn't simply to eat less. The goal is to give our body enough nourishment to function well and maintain strength with aging. And I think this is where the message with calories has gotten so mixed up because most of the messages we see are all about weight loss, weight loss, weight loss, less calories, less calories, less calories. And as we get closer to the end of life, that message is still in our head and it can lead to harm because oftentimes people prioritize weight loss over everything and it ends up creating really poor health outcomes with older adults because of that loss of muscle. So why calories matter with aging? Calories become especially important in older adults because many things can make it harder to eat enough. This includes low appetite, illness, fatigue, difficulty chewing or swallowing, being on different medications that impact appetite, depression, loneliness, or difficulty cooking and chopping because of mobility issues or pain. So if you're struggling to eat enough food, either because you have no appetite or because you're physically not able to make it, or even financially able to afford the foods you need, when calorie intake drops too low, unintended weight loss can happen. So let's talk about why unintended weight loss is so serious. One thing that I really want to emphasize is that unintended weight loss in older adults should never be ignored. I'm going to be covering this a lot on the podcast because it's one of those topics that's closest to my heart. Anytime an older adult loses weight unintentionally, they are losing muscle mass. There's no way around this. If you're losing weight without intention, you are losing muscle mass. Loss of muscle mass increases risk for weakness, falls, frailty, hospitalizations, loss of independence, and poor recovery from illness and eventually potentially death. One of the reasons malnutrition in older adults is such a serious concern is because of all these things that happen. So protecting muscle becomes incredibly important with aging. So I will say calories and protein go hand in hand. In the last episode, I talked all about protein. Today, I'm talking about calories, but they're both equally important. So again, I want to go back to the fact that not every older adult needs more calories. Many older adults may actually need fewer calories than younger adults because perhaps they're less physically active. Maybe, they have a smaller body size, lower energy needs overall. And there are situations when an older adult begins losing weight intentionally. So if someone is intentionally losing weight loss, I think it is imperative to be working with a healthcare team, your healthcare team, to make sure you're getting enough protein and resistance exercise to protect your muscles with weight loss. So we're not talking about weight loss in this episode. We're talking about more calories for preventing unintended weight loss. But the situation really changes completely when an older adult loses weight unintentionally. At that point, calories can become one of the most important nutrient priorities. The goals shift from restriction to preservation of muscle, of strength, of function, and of independence. So let's talk about food sources for calories. Foods highest in calories are typically those higher in fat because fat contains more calories per gram than carbohydrates and protein. We'll be talking about this more on the podcast, but calories come from three main types of foods: protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Those are our macronutrients. And both protein and carbohydrate provide 4 calories per gram of either protein or carbohydrate, where fat provides 9 calories per gram. So every gram of fat, you get over twice the amount of calories. So you get more bang for your buck, as we call it. Some examples of higher calorie foods include avocados, whole milk, olive oil, peanut butter, honey, eggs, butter, coconut, nuts, cottage cheese, ice cream, and more. Of course, like all the times I share any foods, I can't possibly list every food, but these are just some good examples. And one thing I always want to remind people is that increasing calories doesn't necessarily mean eating a huge meal, especially if you have a poor appetite. If you have a poor appetite, eating more food just sounds miserable. It's oftentimes about being strategic and eating higher calorie foods and eating food more frequently throughout the day. So some ways that you could add more calories throughout the day, maybe adding olive oil or butter to the foods you're already eating, using whole milk instead of skim milk, adding peanut butter to toast or oatmeal, snacking on nuts, adding avocado to meals, and small calorie additions really can add up over time. So I guess I mentioned this, but I wanted to come back to it, that calories and protein work together, and they work together in protecting muscle. So if someone is eating more protein but still not getting enough calories overall, their body still may be struggling to maintain their muscle mass. And this is why both nutrients, it's important as we age to get enough calories and protein to prevent muscle loss. So yeah, just like we talked about in the protein episode, exercise and movement also play important roles in preserving muscle and physical function as medically appropriate. So let's talk about when to involve a healthcare team, just because we're talking about unintended weight loss. And I do want you to know, if you're listening, whether or not you're an older adult, caregiver, family member, that unintended weight loss should always be discussed with a provider. In our culture, because we are obsessed with weight loss, what happens typically is someone, especially an older adult, starts losing weight unintentionally. People say, wow, you've lost so much weight. Congratulations. What's your secret? How did you do it? And then there might be some pride of like, oh, I didn't have to do anything. I just lost weight. Not understanding that underlying issue of, oh, shoot, you're losing weight, because the dietitians are over here like, your muscle. So unintended weight loss should never be ignored. It should always be discussed with the provider because there could be something else going on, and there typically is something else going on behind the scenes. Now, unintended weight loss could be related to illness, medication side effects, maybe swallowing problems like dysphagia, digestive issues, depression, cancer, dementia, or other medical issues. So while nutrition support is absolutely important, we also want to identify and address any underlying conditions. And, I'm always a fan of working with a registered dietitian when you can. So one of the reasons I wanted to include calories in the series is because nutrition for older adults isn't always about restriction. It isn't always about less. Sometimes healthy aging nutrition is actually about making sure older adults are eating enough calories, enough protein, enough nourishment to maintain strength and independence. And that's really a shift that we need to make sure that we have. So in recap, calories are a unit of energy the body needs to function. Calories are essential for maintaining muscle strength and physical function, along with our friends' protein and physical activity. Not every older adult does need more calories, but unintended weight loss for older adults is a major concern. We'll be talking about that a lot on the podcast, I'm sure. Anytime an older adult is losing weight unintentionally, muscle is being lost too. High-calorie foods can help prevent unintended weight loss and therefore muscle loss and support independence and health and all the things. And unintended weight loss should always be discussed with your healthcare provider. So if you want to learn more about calories, my website, thegeriatricdietitian.com, is full of articles all about high-calorie foods, preventing unintended weight loss. It is a wealth of information created just for you. So if you found this episode helpful, be sure to follow the podcast and share it with someone you think may benefit from it. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week on the podcast. Want simple nutrition tips to support healthy aging? Download my free guide, 10 Essential Nutrition Tips for Healthy Aging, packed with practical ways to stay strong, nourished, and independent as you age. Grab your free copy in the show notes or visit thegeriatricdietitian.com.